Hey legends, we have a very powerful episode for you today. This is a topic that is very close to my heart. One of my best friends in high school, 6 or 7 years ago, took his own life and committed suicide. This is a topic that's not spoken about enough. It is very taboo, but we want to open it up and normalize it. We have Lauren McDonough on today. She's an incredibly brave person. She comes on and shares her story. She is a suicide survivor, a mental health advocate, and also very big in the fashion space. She sheds a lot of light on what a mental health condition is versus mental health practices in itself. She goes through the mental health public system that we have today, but also shares her own experiences of what she went through. This is an episode that is really, really powerful, really, really meaningful. But also, as I said, we do talk about suicide in this. So that is just a pre-warning. If this is not a topic for you, you don't have to tune in by any means at all. But there was a lot of insight in here and a lot of education of what really normal people can go through and a lot of the basic challenges that we have in society as well. One of the most powerful episodes we've had on today, one of the most courageous people we've had, and I hope you do enjoy it. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, another episode of the Unleashed podcast. If you are new here, thank you for turning up. And if you've come back again, I absolutely love you. Today's episode is a very special one because this is a topic very close to my heart. A lot of you know that we've done a lot of mental health topics. We've done a lot of fitness and wellness topics over the course of the year and last year. But in particular, into my own experiences, I did lose a best friend in high school when I was younger to suicide. And I came across a person, a very interesting person through one of my good friends, Jessie, who we're going to go into and give her a shout out for what she's doing. But today we've got a mental health advocate, a suicide survivor, and also a fashionista by from what I've seen everywhere, Lauren McDonough. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great, actually. We've just been discussing a bit of my producer's dating woes, which is always fun. But hey, just to give a shout out to Jessie Wright for how we even got you on the show. Jessie's been doing some crazy things, which challenged me, and you can shed more light to it because I think you've been on it, but she's going on a dinner date with a stranger.
Yeah, so Jessie Wright, you probably know her on TikTok from the 52 dinners with strangers.
So it's one a week?
Yeah, one a week.
What the? Jessie, man.
She went on a dinner date with a stranger every single week because, yeah, as a way to make new friends and to kind of highlight that it doesn't matter what age, you know, what age you are at or, you know, what career you have. Loneliness is such a real and kind of heavy thing to experience. And she just really wanted to try and not only feel less lonely, like within herself, but to also show the world that it's okay to feel this way and it's such a normal thing.
Yeah. She literally made like news. Or Sunrise or something, she was getting interviewed and I was like, well, this is getting big. Yeah. But shout out to her for doing that because I was like, well,
incredible.
Like, and when I say dinner date, she's not going on with guys, like she's going on with like different, interesting new, like she's doing it to meet friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, like so that's what's pretty cool. And then I think, didn't she have like one big grand dinner with like everyone? Which that's pretty cool in itself. But
it was amazing.
Your story is pretty inspiring. I'm going to go through a lot of things because I think your experience also can help provide education and awareness to our listeners because we all go through our own difficulties and and that's why I want to use this platform to almost utilize your experiences to provide intelligence to people on various things and sort of, I guess, things that you've done that have helped you throughout your life to sort of come through some of the challenges that you've gone through.
Yeah.
But what just quickly to get into this, because a lot of people have heard me say that you're a suicide survivor, which we'll touch on, but what made you feel so comfortable to be like open to share the story and share that side to you? Because that I imagine is not the easiest thing to do.
It's definitely not the easiest thing to do. And to be completely honest with you, I still feel like within myself sometimes it can be a bit uncomfortable to speak about. But that's because the world and the society we live in makes it uncomfortable.
Is that more the stigma you feel from the others rather than your own self? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably what I more meant, right?
Yeah, that's what, like, people make it uncomfortable to speak about. And to me, after everything I went through and having experienced such horrendous things like within our own mental health system, knowing people who have lost their lives to suicide because of our mental health system and stuff like that, it was genuinely a no-brainer to me to share my journey, because I not only wanted to try and provide hope to other people out there who are going through similar things, that, you know what, like things can get better and that they do, but I also wanted to end the stigma around this topic because, believe it or not, like there are more people living with mental health conditions in the world than there are people living without them, if that makes any sense.
Wow, really?
So it just, I just want to try and have a positive impact on the world, and
I think that's great.
Help in any way I can.
I think one thing covering a lot of mental health topics on this, and what I've discovered, and I think it touches on your point too around people that live with more sort of mental health challenges than potentially not, right, is that the difference between a mental health condition versus like taking care of your mental health. Can you explain that to us in your experiences, like what that is? Because I think sometimes they both get branded together.
Yeah, they definitely do both get branded together. I feel like taking care of your mental health is something that is so important and is something that everyone needs to do, because our mental health overall as a picture is just something that makes it kind of defines, not defines us, but it defines our feelings, and kind of taking care of our mental health and doing stuff that makes us feel good, or kind of having little routines and implementing little strategies. And
what are some that you would do? Like, what are some little sort of strategies or routines that maybe you've set in place? Because I'm always interested by that. I think I'm like one of the worst when it comes to routine, and I think that really helps.
I'm definitely not great at routine either.
Thanks too.
But I feel like sometimes you just need a little bit of time out. So if you feel like you're really stressed and things are really hard and, you know, just heavy and you just feel yuck, sometimes it's best just to have a little break, to have time out, to do something that you find calms you down, whether it be like, I know for me it can be like a 10-step skincare routine.
Oh, really?
And just like taking that time to really focus on that and
be present.
Be present in the moment instead of having to worry about everything else around me. I feel like it's important for people to do that and to find something that can make them feel better mentally overall. But I feel like with mental health conditions, it is so separate to like mental health, although there are definite like similarities. Like mental health conditions, like any other health condition, is an illness that you live with. You have the symptoms of different illnesses. You have fluctuations of the illness. You have times where things are better. You have times where things are challenging. You have to kind of not navigate your life around it, because your mental health condition isn't your life, but you also have to try and navigate life around it in the same sense, because you have to try and find a balance of what makes you feel better and what treatments work for you and what will benefit you in the long run, because overall, mental health conditions can be extremely hard and exhausting and debilitating to live with. And I feel like it's just, at the end of the day, it's really trying to find your own little niche and figuring out what is going to make you be able to live the best life you can with the condition you have.
Yeah. Is it almost like you've got to punch life in the face back a little bit? Like you've actively got to kind of go after and look for things that you work with to make you sort of feel better on a day-to-day basis without sort of letting it overtake you? Is it something that you've got to be like proactive with, I'd imagine?
Yeah. Well, I know for me, for example, with my mental health, if I am in a really bad depressive episode and I don't get out of bed for a couple of days. I don't get out of bed for about a month after that.
I did that about like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I couldn't get out of bed. So I think I could, and I feel like I'm quite a high-functioning human being. So that's why I think this topic's like everyone's susceptible to having 100%. Good and bad periods, you know? Yeah.
And there's this quote, and I don't know where I saw it, but it has always stayed with me. And I think it was something along the lines of, you don't need to be broken to have a mental health condition. You just need to be human. And I think it's just so important to really reiterate that and highlight that point, because people have this preconceived idea that, you know, people with mental health conditions are broken, and that people with mental health conditions are just all these things that are completely untrue. But mental health conditions can have an effect on any one of us. It doesn't matter who you are, how rich you are, what you do for a job. Yeah.
Is there like a predisposition with some of the mental health conditions? Is it something that can develop, or is it something that people can essentially be born with as well?
I think it's a combination of both, really.
Right.
I can only speak from my own personal experience.
Yeah.
There is a predisposition to mental health conditions within my family. But I also think that people can be born with it as well. I think at the end of the day, it's our brain chemistry, and it's like it can be a combination of both biological and environmental factors. So it depends, you know, what environment you grew up in and how that environment affected you growing up. You know, you could have, for example, a trauma that you experienced when you were younger, and that has stemmed into a mental health condition later on in life, because that trauma affected you so deeply and personally. But then also at the same time, you know, you could have absolutely no trauma or absolutely nothing go wrong with your life, but it's just the way that your brain is kind of, not wired, but kind of the chemistry within your brain is interacting with each other, and it can just be like really like a lack of, for example, with depression, like a lack of serotonin and stuff like that within your brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, I've got ADHD, so I think that's essentially, which is funny, right? Because I hope my mum's not watching this, but she used to yell at me so much for like me losing stuff and being like not necessarily hyperactive, but like forgetting things or like level of detail in some certain aspects of my life. Where other things I was like, when I was passionate about something, for example, like soccer is sort of what a lot of people would know that I used to do that listen to the podcast. Like my drive and determination with that and the level of detail was like on an extreme level. So, but by opposite, like I might leave sunglasses at a restaurant that I was just at and like remember it like 2 days later. So that's kind of like, you know, my sort of something that I've always had that I've had to deal with, and I've only identified it in the last 6 months. So now I've called my mum and said, hey, remember all those times you were telling me off? Like kind of have like a mild excuse that I can use now. But from like because obviously with that as an ADHD as an example, I'm not sort of suggesting that that's a condition of any sort, because sometimes that can be a bit of a superpower if harnessed, but at the same time destructive. But with mental health conditions as such, like how do you identify that? Because one, it's feeling maybe not the best at times, but how do you actually identify there's, you know, maybe an imbalance, you know, chemically or in the brain or whatever?
Once again, only stemming from my own personal experience. I know when I started experiencing symptoms of depression, I just was feeling really low and exhausted and suicidal and wanting to take my own life, and just feeling completely like just to try and like explain it, like that's just how I felt, like 24/7. And I started losing motivation to do things, and I didn't want to be around people, and I didn't want to really do anything. And I kind of stemmed from that there was an issue there.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I started seeking professional help that it was then kind of diagnosed.
Okay. So how do they, like that probably more to be my question, how do they diagnose it? Like do they run tests? Like, and when I'm asking you, I'm asking obviously to your, no, we're not generalizing here by any stretch, but in your situation, do they like run tests, or do you have to do certain things? Because I don't exactly know how that gets identified. So that'd be interesting.
I'll go off an example recently. So I kind of had a major depressive disorder relapse, And my psychiatrist made me fill out this sheet or these sheets, kind of rating, 1 to 4, 1 to 4 each question. And basically off these sheets, she's like, well, we didn't need to determine that you're depressed, but yeah, like what you have like answered shows that you're depressed. And I know that sometimes like those kind of methods can be done, and then other times I think it can be pretty obvious. I mean, for example, one time when I was hospitalised, I didn't move or talk or like I couldn't even lift my arm up.
Really?
I was that depressed.
Wow. Is it like a feeling of exhaustion in a way? Like,
Yeah, pretty much.
wow. Because there's a lot of people it's like a lot of people live with it and don't talk about it or don't actively seek help too. So like they're the ones that I really spare a thought for, because I'm like, they're not initiating a fight back and they don't even have an understanding potentially of what's going on.
And it breaks my heart thinking about how many people are going through such horrendous, just crappy situations. And they aren't able to receive the help, or they don't have the support around them. And it just, like the ultimate wish and goal is for everyone to be able to speak about their mental health, and for everyone to be able to kind of have a support system and have a safe place where they're able to speak and where they're able to open up. And it's and hopefully by having conversations like these in the future, everyone will be able to have that kind of
freedom to do
that.
Yeah, I feel like it's getting a little bit more normalized, like in a sense, like for instance, like the stigma around males not being able to talk, like that's still well and truly like alive, because I'm a male, so I can probably relate to that more. But at the same time, I'm finding now with my friendship groups, people are opening up about certain things to like make each other aware, which I think like 5-10 years ago, I don't think that would have happened. So I feel like there is, it is getting better. But do you still think like that there is that sort of stigma across the space where people aren't actively going and getting help or support? Like, do you think people are still sort of stuck in the sense of like
100%?
Yeah. Well, like anyone listening that may be going through that, what would be your advice to them? Because you've obviously been there.
I would say that it's definitely not an easy thing to speak about your emotions, and it is going to be uncomfortable to speak about things that are difficult to live with and feel heavy and, just crappy. But it's also really, really important to do this. There is absolutely no shame in speaking about your mental health or your emotions or how you're feeling at all. And there should never be any shame around it. You're a human being at the end of the day, and the only way that you can really work on yourself and work through these difficult things is by sharing these emotions. You don't need to, and you don't deserve to carry the burden of that heaviness alone. Speak. People love you. People care about you. Trust me, like so many more people care about you than you could ever possibly realize. And just know that you don't have to go through your dark times alone.
Yeah, I think you're surprised. Like when I've reached out to people with things that I've been going through, particularly like I would say I don't know if I could ever frame it as depression, but the lowest I've ever been was when I came out of sport, just because I was trying to navigate like a new person, and like the kind of highs that I would get from playing sport, I couldn't reiterate in any other walk or format of life. So when I started like speaking to people about that, and I'm talking just like my mates, what was really profound, and I think you'll know this with like the people that you really trust, or you really, that they're really with you as your friends, their reactions are like, they're quite surprising, because they're like, they welcome that information. Like, it's like, why didn't you tell me that? was some of the responses. Why have you waited 12 months to tell me that? And that instantly makes you feel comfortable, because that's kind of the worry at first. Is like, my thing was probably my ego. I didn't want to show people that, I can get really low when people see you in a certain light. But also it was like, oh no, what are they going to think?
Yeah.
And then you speak to them, and it's like, well, one of my best mates is like, bro, I called him probably, 6 months into it. He's like, why didn't you call me earlier? It's like having a go at me. And instantly I'm there just like chuckling on the phone like, oh yeah, why didn't I do that?
Yeah.
So as hard as it is, like that first step, like once you do it, then it can become really easy, because you realize that it's a big deal, but it's not as big a deal as you think. Like, people are willing to support you.
100%. And I always go back to this, but after I lost my legs in my suicide attempt, I was in hospital for a few months having surgeries, and I was in the medical ward having endless complications, and before I went into rehab to try and learn to walk again, I think I had over 30 surgeries, and I was there for about 3.5 months.
Wow.
And when I thought nobody cared about me and that nobody could give a crap whether I was alive or dead, I could have not been any more wrong about that. I mean, I had people from high school I hadn't seen in years wanting to come see me, which I wasn't always happy about, to be honest. But
but it just shows, hey.
Even I went to a Catholic high school, and even the sister, so the school nun, came to visit me in hospital.
In the school nun,
school nun,
outfit?
And I left the school in year 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. I mean, shout out to the nuns then of the world. Thank you for doing that. Oh, wow.
It was crazy. It was absolutely wild. Like school counselors, teachers, people like
came out of the woodworks.
Out of the woodworks. And it just goes to show that this topic and stuff like this really does have like a ripple effect and a huge impact on people.
Because I want to go into sort of the process and I guess the pattern towards your sort of suicide attempt. But just on that point, like, did your perspective in the world change at all when people were coming out of the woodworks? Was that like quite eye-opening? Because I imagine for me that would have been like, oh, wow. Do you know, like...
It was definitely eye-opening. For several months, my hospital room looked like a florist.
No, did it really? Wow.
So it definitely felt, it was really a combination of all these different feelings. I felt like, for example, guilt.
Yeah.
For being alive still, because I was still depressed and suicidal. Guilt for putting my family and friends through all of that. I was confused about how I even came out of this situation alive. And then I was confused about all of these people coming to visit me all the time, and it was just like this huge wave roller coaster of emotions constantly. And
that's exhausting for me to just think about that right now, like all those sort of waves of different thoughts. And that must have been a tiring process for you, like just sitting there still, but actually your mind's racing. Yeah. Yeah,
I couldn't even go to the toilet by myself for months, so.
Yeah, that hurts. Yeah. I had to do that when I had surgery once. So it's a humbling experience, isn't it? That's all I'll say. Pissing and shitting in front of someone else. Hey, just to go into your journey and what were the components across your journey and that sort of made you feel like it wasn't worth sticking around? Was there things that happened, or was it just kind of the condition that you've sort of found within that you're living with as such was driving you there naturally?
Honestly, probably more that. I think what a lot of people don't get about depression is that it is silent, it is at its worst deadly. It is insidious, and it's stubborn and doesn't want to piss off. And when you're at your lowest and you're having these thoughts and your mind is constantly racing 24/7, anything around you, and anything that other people can say or will say can be just completely dismissed because your mind has pretty much just taken over you. Like, I know for me, when I have been at my worst and at my most suicidal, like I could hear people speak, but my mind was just elsewhere, and I could only think about these thoughts. I could only feel these thoughts, and they become so strong and so powerful that they actually convince you that ending your life is the only way that the pain you're in will ever end. And for me, once I hit that point, I couldn't really, unfortunately, get out of that mindset. And it's depression is silent, and I wouldn't wish it upon.
That makes me emotional, man. Listen to that. That's powerful. Because I think, that's the other aspect of it is like, was there anyone in your life that was really, really aware to what was going on? Like in your eyes, like maybe initially anyway?
So the actual morning of this incident happening, I was receiving, I wouldn't say treatment, but I was in the public mental health system, and I had a misdiagnosis of borderline personality disorder, and that disorder within itself is a very highly misunderstood and stigmatized condition. And I actually went into the psychiatrist treating me at the time, and I collapsed on the floor, crying, screaming, saying, like, you need to do something. Like, I'm not bullshitting you. Something is about to happen. Like, something is seriously, seriously wrong. And I was told in that moment that I was being manipulative and attention-seeking, and that I actually wasn't suicidal. So
when you say like something wrong, like what was the kind of sensations for you to say that? Like what were you was it like voices in your head? Was it something that
I knew I was about to do something like that.
Yeah. So you were kind of like reaching out as like this, like help, please, because I don't want to do this, but this is like I'm feeling compelled.
Yeah.
As such. Yeah.
Yeah. And
that was their response.
That was their response, and then,
dude, fuck the system.
Seriously,
fuck the system, bruv. Yeah.
In that moment, I thought, well, fuck this. Yeah. Honestly, like, a psychiatrist is supposed to care about you. If this idiot, no offense, can't even do that, what's the point? Nobody gives a shit. And then that night,
Had you, like, this is probably as deep as I'll go because obviously I want to respect your space, but I know you did share that you were comfortable to talk about it, but like, was this something you planned? Because why I asked that is just to reference my friend, and I actually am going to dedicate this episode to Sean and Felicity Forremel because they were, Sean's very close to my heart and I still talk to his mum today, but he sent text messages out to everyone in the morning, and we hadn't spoke for like 2-3 years because I was his best mate in high school from year 7 to 9, and then I left school young because of soccer. So he was one of those guys I didn't speak to every day, but when I saw him, it was like nothing had changed. Yeah. So it was like a very special friendship. And then I didn't actually know what was going on with him, but I knew that he, similar to some of your stories, he was kind of been identified with the mental health condition that he was living with, but he was wearing a brave face with like a lot of his friends in his circle. And then after everything happened, his mum would tell me like he'd come home and be like that was exhausting, like pretty much putting on that sort of act and that mindset. And he probably lived in a little bit of silence, but one day he walked out of like the rehab clinic and took his own life. But the morning of, he sent text messages out to everyone, like kind of thanking them for like their friendship and their life. And it's kind of still broke me to this day that like I never got one. Because like always, not that I cared, but at the same time, like I just kind of missed him. But I presumed based off that he'd planned it. So from your aspect, was that something that, was it more instinctive just in the moment on the day? Or was it something that you'd been building up for some time?
I wouldn't say it was an impulsive decision. It had definitely been building up silently for a good couple of months, progressively getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Wow, you're pretty brave to talk about it, to be honest. It's makes me tear up. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, 'cause talking about my friend, it's really sad. But even just hearing you, like, it's the thing is the commonality of it. Like, there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of people a year that take their own life. Like, it's a really difficult and taboo topic that is perceived to talk about, but equally really important to talk about. Like, was there the process of obviously what happened is you're an amputee now as well. So
Yeah.
like how like the fallout of obviously the attempt and staying alive. Can you shed some light of that exactly? Because that in itself like is a whole nother story, really. Like it's
So now I'm a bilateral below knee amputee, so I've lost both my legs pretty much
knee
here down.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, I fractured all my lower spine. I was in an induced coma for about a week after that. And I spent about 3.5 months in hospital. After the incident too, I had over 30 surgeries. So lots of skin graftings and yeah, just crazy stuff happening. I remember I still had this leg initially. I just lost the right foot. But I gained a staph infection, so it needed to be amputated immediately.
Yeah. Yep.
And then after that, I went into septic shock, so my organs started shutting down on me, and yeah, it was definitely a very physically challenging time, but having all of that happen on top of what I was going through already mentally was, still retrospectively, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how I did it. I just,
is it like, I mean, based off what you just said, like, are you lucky to be alive, like, in a sense? Like, is there that element to, like, 30 surgeries to suggest that?
Yeah, so.
Like, there was a lot of fight to.
So, long story short, I stepped in front of a train.
Right.
Wow. Coming full speed.
Thank you for sharing.
So, pretty much I am very, very lucky to still be alive. I don't have a brain injury either. Only about 0.1% of people come out of that situation without a brain injury. So I definitely,
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Very,
in short, yes.
very, very.
Yeah. Wow.
Fortunate.
Is there? Wow. I mean, thank you for sharing that because I imagine that's not easy to share. It's a really hard thing to talk about. But from the other side, like, was there? I guess coming from the place you are now, even the process of coming out of the hospital, was there any relief that you were kind of still here? Was there any sort of regret with the decision making, or was that something with where you were at, you were still sort of challenged with the guilt of, you didn't want to be sort of there?
I'll say this, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again, and I know so many other people who have survived similar situations to me will say the same also. When you are in that really suicidal space, it's not so much that you want to die. It's more that you're in so much pain that you want the pain you are in to end. So it's kind of like...
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
Do you know why it does? And it's not to cut you off, but just to, like, one of my, I'm not going to say favorite documentaries to watch because it's really sad, but it was one of my, like, real reality checks of life documentaries that I watched. I think it's called The Jump. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's on the Golden Gate Bridge because that's where
Kevin Hines?
Yeah, Kevin Hines.
I know Kevin,
Yeah, so he did, like, a sample pool of like I think there's been over 50,000 suicide jumps off the Golden Gate Bridge. Like it's the destination to do it, right? And I'm pretty sure the number's high, but I can only find online a number of 29 people that had jumped and survived. Like some of the chances of them surviving is like 4%, or less than.
Next to none.
Yeah, next to none, right? Because it's like concrete when they hit the water. But a few people get lucky because a boat goes past and there's ripples in the water, and some people, just have like breaks and spinal challenges. Like there's one story of a guy, I don't know if you've heard of it, and I'll get to my point, but he'd pretty much like obliterated all the bones in his body, but he was still alive. And a sea lion, like I don't know if you've been to San Fran, but there's sea lions in the water there. A sea lion held him up for half an hour, and someone saw him and saved his life. But what I wanted to raise that point to your point of like people wanting to get rid of pain and die, and the difference of that is 29 people that he interviewed who survived, 100% of them said that as soon as they jumped, they regretted their decision.
Yeah. And even Kevin said that himself.
Which is
he
crazy.
Knew that he made the biggest mistake of his life, and that he just needed to stay afloat.
Yeah, that to me was like a whole really challenging thing to try and understand and comprehend, but made so much sense as well.
Yeah.
Because you can imagine jumping, like a bungee jump, it's like a really free feeling. And then, you're kind of soaring to a plummet. It's a challenging thing at the same time to comprehend. So that's probably why I asked that question, if there was that aspect to it. How do you know Kevin? You just met it, like just what?
Through work.
Through work, yeah.
Kind of know him through someone else who's like really good mates with him, and then I think his wife and I follow each other on Instagram. So
there you go. Well, for those that don't know, Kevin's one of the prime examples of the survivors of the Golden Gate Bridge, and he's now similar to you, like a suicide survivor that's wanting to prevent other suicides.
I think he got all the railing up or something to stop jumpers on the bridge past.
There you go. Wow. Amazing. That's incredible. Is this a space now for you where you, like, speaking about it, and God knows, like, this is what's so beautiful about this podcast is sometimes you don't realize the amount of people you're touching. Like, I see the numbers, but, like, they're just numbers. Like, it's different when you, like, there could be 3 people watching it at home on YouTube or something, But, like, when I get a lot of people that come up to me and, like, the engagement of, like, what they say and share and things that have helped them through, like, we've had some super meaningful messages sent in which have blown me away. And this is kind of one of those things, you can't calculate how many people you're helping, but do you foresee, like, is that something that you're doing now? Is that something you want to do, get into the suicide prevention space to open the door up to conversation? Because of, I guess, the way you speak about it, it's quite brave. I'm sure there's a lot of people taking something out of it.
I feel like in a sense I already do it now.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that I'd want to kind of branch out and do a lot more of in the future. I feel like you can't. It's kind of like a progressive thing with something like this, because you don't want to just blurt out your message and then become completely burnt out by it. You kind of got to be careful with how you kind of spread your message, but at the same time, you've got to take into consideration how are you taking care of yourself and all of that kind of stuff. Also.
Yeah, I agree. Do you know, like, again, we're not experts here, but I feel from your experience, like, one thing I've probably don't know how to handle other than sometimes just sitting there in silence, which I think maybe is the answer. But, like, for people that have friends that are in a suicidal place, or they're not even there, they're just in a really bad place mentally, and you obviously want to be there for them, but naturally we don't have the expertise to know exactly the right things to do or sometimes the right things to say. Like, what would be your advice from maybe your own education and going through things that, if you were in that situation, you would look to do for someone else that was going through struggle?
I think that you're not always going to know the right things to do or say, but I also think it's really, really important to hold hope for the person who is really struggling, and to also be there for that person no matter what, because it can be frustrating. Like, I can't imagine how frustrating it would have been for my parents or my family or friends or just people around me just wanting to do stuff and wanting to help, but they couldn't. And thinking about it from a different headspace now, like if that was any of my family or friends, like I know I would be frustrated too, because I would just want to help them and want what is best for them. But I also think it's really important to just, even if it's just sitting there and listening to what that person has to say, and not judging them. Not judging them is so, so, so important. The moment that we start to judge people because of their struggles and make them feel invalidated, it can lead to kind of like a whole downward spiral.
It can violently activate
100%.
proceedings or things that they've, I think there's a real trend of that people are in a bad place and then something like that can change everything in a moment. That's where the sensitivity.
You don't need to be a professional. You don't need to have all the answers either. Just be there.
Yeah.
I feel like that can be, like, for so many people, it can be the difference between, you know, in some situations, the reason they're still alive or the reason why, unfortunately, they might not be with us today.
You mentioned before the public health system, which, and fuck the system, but they're my words, not yours.
No, they're mine too.
Yeah, okay. But just your visibility into it, like if you were to, because I think in our generation, people don't give us enough credit for the brains that we can offer in certain things. Like I talk about the AFL goal technology review system all the time. Like if they just give me that and the funding, I'll fix it tomorrow. Like I don't think it's that hard. But like they're not going to ask me, and they probably won't ask you how to fix the public health system. But you've had visibility into it and where its pitfalls have led to some drastic elements of your life. Can you just open the door up to providing insight to people like me and the listeners at home of like what it is, like how it's set up now and things that you think like really need to change to evoke better outcomes in people's lives? I'm not asking you to, I'm asking you to redraw like a government department here. But essentially just like what were some of the things where you saw it was like, this isn't going to help people?
For starters, they don't get anywhere near enough funding for the amount of patients that they have coming in and out of.
Is it taxpayer driven as well? Like, I assume so. They're not allocating enough funding, or what is that?
It's just the government in general.
There is taking all this money and not investing
enough funding for for starters, effective treatments to be taking place. Unfortunately, a big downside of having a mental health condition can be the cost and having to pay ridiculous amounts of money to try and access all of this like different treatment and stuff like that. And not everyone has the privilege to be able to do that. There are so many people, especially within the public health system, coming in and out of that outpatient clinic that are extremely disadvantaged, very, very poor financially, and in some situations they've just been within that mental health system for so long. It's all they really know, to be honest. I wish I didn't say that. Like, I have to say that, but
no, it's just
true.
reality, right?
It's reality, and it's so heartbreaking. I know when I've been in hospital a couple of times, there is a patient I can think of off the top of my head who has schizoaffective disorder, and he has been hospitalised for over 25 years.
Wow. Is that because the system can't?
Because he can't. Well, he's probably been in there for so long now, he doesn't know how to live within the community. But
he's like institutionalised almost.
Yeah,
in a sense. That's tough.
Like, it makes me want to tear up thinking about it.
Yeah, that's awful.
Because it's no quality or way of life. I couldn't, I've been in there for a month, for example, at times, and it's driven me insane. So
yeah, man.
it's just
Wow. I mean, look, that's why the awareness you're raising around this. It's like some of us don't know this stuff, and like it could lead to, an individual across your life, even for people themselves.
And then with the mental health, like Royal Commission and stuff, with all of the stuff that they want to implement within the public health system, there's nowhere near enough funding to be able to do that either. So
yeah,
I think, not only does there need to be a lot more funding around all of that, but yeah, there's also probably too many clients.
Yeah, to staff.
To staff.
It's like hospitals.
Yeah, and they're probably just burnt out. Like I couldn't imagine.
I spare a thought for them. And like they're as they say, not all heroes, not all superheroes wear capes, because they some of those workers, what they do from a tireless effort point of view to the numbers that they have to look after is insane. So shout out to them. But hey, I think we've covered a lot. I mean, I don't know if there's anything else that I've missed other than you're looking pretty dapper, little fashion queen.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. But I honestly think you might be one of the most courageous people that we've had on the podcast in regards to like.
You.
I really mean that. Like I don't get too emotional most times, but like I've held back tears today because it was quite deep and powerful, and to actually come on here, be brave enough to talk about it to our listeners.
I just hope I spoke okay. Like I'm a bit foggy at the moment.
No, but I think you'll be. I think people at home will take a lot away from this. And for those at home listening that are going through a tough time, there's definitely helplines out there which we'll put into the bio. Yeah,
I just also want to say that you're just so loved and you are so needed and you are so worthy, and I just hope that you know that today. Yeah,
I appreciate that. Well, and for everyone at home, I think that was directed at you guys, but I felt that. So, hey, you guys can always call me if you need me, all right? But just remember, life does get tough, but just keep turning up and things will get better. If Lauren can come through what she has, no doubt everyone can fight and figure things out at home. But this was a really sort of special episode, quite a taboo topic that we want to normalise and open up. We've definitely stepped into the mental health space within the last 12 months. So thank you guys for you guys that are here at the end of the episode. I absolutely love all of you for supporting it. Please give us a like and subscribe. Get following Lauren. She produces great content. She's constantly out there. I'm sure she'll be a shoulder to lean on if any of you guys need as well. So, Lauren, thank you for
having me.
Coming on the show. Guys, we love you. We'll see you next week.